Good evening. Today is Monday, August 1st, 2016. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. It is 7:56. I would ask for the clerk, I would ask you all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you call the roll.
Okay, York, absent. Toledo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Honquist.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Sabatino.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Bram.
Here.
Polumsky. Here. 13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. Before I move on to agenda item number 3, you may note the bunting behind me and also bunting out in City Hall. That is due to the untimely passing of previously elected official and treasurer here in the city of Elmhurst, Dave Dyer. I know his passing was sudden, and his family is going through some tough times. So I'm all asking if you will join me in a moment of silence. Okay, our thoughts and prayers are with his family. On to agenda item 3, written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody in the audience who has any written communication they wish to submit for distribution later to council? Any written communication, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to public forum. Public forum, this is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on any item you so choose. When your name is called, we ask that you head over to the microphone over here to my right, and state your name for the record as we are recording. Your address is optional. We ask that you keep your comment to 3 minutes out of respect for other folks that may want to speak this evening and out of respect for the work that we have to get done this evening. If you go over your 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up. Clerk Spencer, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up on our sign-in sheet for public forum?
Yes, Mayor. Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
How many, Gene?
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. Was at the last meeting. What should show up on this meeting? Thornton. Gentleman was curious why the city administration was holding up on his liquor license. In fact, he even indicated he wrote the ordinance that he would like the city to pass. Well, wouldn't you know it? Tonight you're going to vote on it. Amazing, isn't it? People have come here for 6 years, and it's taken 6 years to try to get any movement on flooding. Thornton comes down. He's all taken care of. Interesting. Why should it show up on your agenda? Alderman wants something for his ward. He needs somebody to back him up. Council passed those rules. Some aldermen fought it, but he needs somebody to back it up. Who backed up Thornton? Silence, always. It's always great. States passed a law. What it requires is that no home rule entity has to keep records of their public officials and their billing for trips and everything. It's amazing, isn't it? It's a non-home rule. But since it's a home rule little outfit here, I'm going to ask, is there a requirement to any ordinance, any belief, that the people that represent and officially work for us and take trips have to account for their billing mayor and the city manager go to the mayor and city manager's two-page meeting of managers. Got a police chief, got a fire chief, got a head of sewage. Any ordinance, gentlemen? Or do they just take trips and pay for it out of their own pockets? See, the state passed a bill for what's been going on. So I would hope that the council, in its grand wisdom, has some regulations on those trips.
Mr. Pagash, I'd ask you to wrap up your comments.
Yeah, I know there's going to be no answer, Mayor. But maybe we can get one alderman to just say it's a good idea and doesn't have to have another one back them up.
Victoria Lakowski, 640 North Kenilworth.
Good evening, Council. I would like to talk about the noise at O'Hare Airport. On Saturday morning at 3 a.m., there was a lot of vibration in my house, and actually my shower curtain fell from the vibration, and I went online and looked at the website for O'Hare, and it looks like the 4R to 22L primary landing strip, which heads northeast, that's what was being used, which actually does go right over my house. And I wanted to come tonight to let you know about the vibration and, you know, things falling like cups from the cabinet when I open the door, and boxes in the basement, and some things break like glass and stuff when I open the cabinets. You know, there's quite a bit of vibration. It's almost like a little earthquake. I was thinking maybe I could volunteer to have noise proofing in my house. And I did send a complaint with the aircraft noise on their website. And of course, I'd appreciate any help you could give. Thanks.
That is all who signed in this evening, Mayor.
Okay, that's it for public forum. For those that had an opportunity to sign in on our sign-in sheet in the back, is there anybody in the audience at this time who did not have an opportunity to sign up on the sheet that Clerk Spencer has but wishes to address the council at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Anyone in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign up? Seeing none, we will conclude public forum. On to announcements. Agenda item 5, any announcements from the dais? Alderman Dunn.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to thank the Public Works Department for their diligence in kind of getting to the bottom of a weird issue we had on Lorraine and Crockett, where we had rather dry weather, but a lot of backyards were getting saturated. And it was determined there was an old well in there after some digging, literally digging, and located that, and I appreciate the efforts by the Public Works Department, along with the residents that were extremely patient over that few-week period while that was being troubleshooted. Thanks.
Okay, any other announcements? Alderman Leader. You can see how I can mix that up.
Yeah.
Alderman Leader.
Since we're handing out kudos to Public Works, I also want to thank Public Works on the 100, particularly for those homes in the 100 block of Highland, because there is going to be some blasting in the quarry in the next week or so, and in the interest of flood mitigation, and the idea being to enlarge its capacity to store water, which will have a very positive effect on many homes in Elmhurst. So the people from, particularly Kent Johnson, who was out there, I don't see Kent here, but who came out and counseled with a number of homeowners on that 100 block of Highland who were very concerned, naturally. They're setting off these explosives. And I want to thank Kent particularly, but all the people in Public Works were just great. They answered, we had a meeting over there, and they answered all of these people's questions, and they were very, very relieved after the meeting. So again, my colleague and I both thank you for your good work over there.
Okay, any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Before I continue with the consent agenda, our city attorney has something that he needs to state for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to item 6.22 on your agenda, on the consent agenda, it's a resolution authorizing and approving a settlement agreement between the City of Elmhurst and Roger Guzzi. I wanted to verbalize a few things. One, this item is a settlement for personal injury claims made by Roger Guzzi against the City of Elmhurst. The settlement amount is $55,000. There are no admissions of liability on the part of the city, among other items mentioned in the 5-page settlement agreement, which is in your packet, but I just wanted to verbalize that, actually 6-page, for the record. Thanks, Mayor, that's it.
Okay, on the consent agenda at this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to have removed for further comment or to vote no? Any items? Alderman Bram.
6.16.
6.16, okay. Any other items from the consent agenda to be removed or for further comment? Seeing none, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 6.16. Motion by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Kennedy. Clerk Spencer.
York, absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Bram.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved minus item 6.16. On to agenda item 6.16. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the City Council approve the installation of the parking restriction signage along Mitchell Avenue from St. Charles Road to Eggleston Avenue, as recommended above. The committee recommends the city attorney be authorized to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed by Chris Healy, Chairman, Danny Palumski, Vice Chairman, Norm Leader.
Okay, to put this before council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Palumski. Alderman Healy, your report.
Thank you, Mayor. This was the result of action taken by mainly Alderman Levin on behalf of the residents of Mitchell Avenue. As we all know, high school parking during the school year is a challenge in the First Ward north of the high school and certainly south of the high school in the Fifth Ward along St. Charles. What we've found or what we're seeing is with Whole Foods going in and stopping the students from parking in their lot, which previously had been in, either unused or when Dominic's was there, they looked the other way. A lot of students parked there. Well, that option's gone away. Whole Foods has been pretty aggressive. We've seen cars get further dispersed, and one of the areas that those cars got dispersed into was Mitchell Avenue. Residents contacted, again, mainly Alderman Levin. The city surveyed the area, Mitchell Avenue. We sent out 37 surveys, got responses by 23 of them. Of the 23, 20 of them indicated support for some sort of restriction. Of the 20 positive votes for some sort of restriction, there were 2 options that were equally favored by the residents. One that called for complete ban on parking on the west side of the street, and then a Monday through Friday school day ban on parking between 8 and 4. The other favored option of the residents was both sides of the street, 8 to 4 restriction on parking during school days. Staff looked at it, determined that there was not a safety issue, meaning if cars are parked on both sides of the street, safety equipment could get through, so it wasn't a safety issue thing. So then the committee, with the help of a lot of residents, we actually had quite a few residents turn out. The discussion then became, okay, we're gonna impose some sort of restriction. What should we do? And the committee discussion focused mainly on the two of the favored options by the residents. And what we ultimately came down to was what we deemed to be the least restrictive of the two options. That being no parking Monday through Friday school days, both sides of the street. That one seemed, at least to the residents at the meeting, that was favored among them. And in the opinion of staff and the committee, that was the least restrictive, so we went with that. And that is the report that you see before you now.
Okay. Alderman Bram, you pulled this report.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Alderman Healy, for your summary. I guess the reason why I pulled this report was because I wanted to have an understanding of what the safety issue was. As Alderman Healy just stated, that there is not a safety issue. So I'm actually even more concerned, if there's no safety issue, why are we posing parking restrictions on either of these blocks on Mitchell? I reached out to staff, police, fire, and public works as well. There's no line of sight issue due to these cars. Is it the ideal situation, having cars on both sides of the street? No. Staff, specifically fire, stated that that is not the ideal situation, but they are able to get through. And if for whatever reason they weren't, there's always that plan B of being able to back up and maneuver and go around as necessary, like any street. I have a lot of history in this area, being on the Public Affairs Committee for many years, and it seems that we continue to take steps overall as a city that you're squeezing one end of the balloon and causing the issue to go to another part or the other end of the balloon to blow up. In this case, I deem the proposal to be is maybe resolving what the residents on those blocks would like to see, but you're pushing the problem to another block over. And that's what has been continually over the years. We have talked in the previous public affairs meetings, Alderman Mulliner served with me at that time, about doing a comprehensive study on what can be done. I do agree that the biggest reason for this is because of limited parking at York High School, and that's something we can't control. But the survey that was sent out was restrictive parking essentially on both sides of the street. Less restrictive in one case, and that's what the report is recommending, but on both sides of the street. There's no safety issue, so I'm concerned that we're doing any restrictions, but say there is a safety issue, to allow the fire department to get down those 2 blocks quicker. Why on both sides of the street? Keep in mind, this is a public street. People are allowed to park on public streets, thus the word public. Restrictions should be done only if there's a safety issue. I'll buy into the fact that I believe that there is a limited safety issue because it will slow down emergency equipment. I'm curious, and maybe the committee can speak to this, on why, or was there any discussion on restrictions to one side of the street, and why was that not the option to pursue compared to restrictions on both sides of the street?
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. Clear up a couple things. First, the survey itself was not worded as such that choose your restriction. The residents had an option to check no changes. Of the 23 that responded, only 3 checked the no changes. So clearly, the belief among the residents was something needed to be done. Second, we need to remember that this is a city policy that allows a neighborhood, if the neighborhood deems it so, to impose restrictions on themselves, because that's really who's impacted here. Yeah, there's students impacted that'll park there from York, but it's really the residents that are heavily impacted. And in this case, overwhelmingly, they chose some form of restriction to place on themselves. So I think it's important that the city, it's not deemed as a city imposed, it's the residents saying this is what we want for our block. We did have probably the longest part of our conversation was, of the two options, like I said, complete restriction, 24/7, 365 on the west side, and then 8 to 4 school days on the east side, or what we settled on, which was 8 to 4 on school days on both sides. I'm sorry, 2-hour restriction, I'm sorry, it's not a restriction on parking, thank you, Alderman Polumsky. It's 2-hour restriction. That ultimately, and point blank, we asked staff, we asked Ken Johnson, what's your recommendation? And he recommended the 2-hour restriction Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 on school days, because in staff's opinion, it was the least restrictive of all the options. The committee agreed, and that's what we went with. So there was a conversation. In terms of, to use Alderman Bram's analogy of squeezing the bubble on one end, and he's right. Short of building a parking deck, that ain't going away. And it was actually Alderman Plumsky asked, well, should we go an additional street east, which is Prospect, thank you. And we decided, the residents of Prospect haven't come to us and said, we've got a problem. Now, maybe they will in a few months if the cars keep going further east, but it was also the committee's belief that at some point, there's a law of diminishing returns. You park 3/4 of a mile, mile and a half away from York, it's not worth driving to York, or you're going to find somewhere else to park. So if we've in fact created a bubble effect and the cars are going to go somewhere, we'll deal with Prospect when the residents of Prospect raise their hands, as they did in this case with Mitchell, and said, we've got a problem. Likewise, what we committed to the residents of Mitchell that attended, and I would say there was a good 12, 15 of them, we said if what we've done now with the 2-hour restriction, both sides of the street, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 during school days, if that's too restrictive, we'll take another look at it. Personally, I don't believe we will, but we've certainly said to the residents, if it's a problem or these restrictions, if the medicine is worse than the disease, we can pull the signs out too. So I think the residents appreciated that, but again, overwhelmingly, the residents are the ones that said, we want something done. We viewed this as the least restrictive.
Alderman Levin.
Yeah, thank you. Personally, I'm going to support this report. I understand Alderman Bram's position. It seems a little restricted. It's not a proper restriction to start telling residents they can't park on streets. But first of all, I do think personally there's a safety issue. I went over there and observed 3 mornings before I put in the report, and cars were backed up trying to get off the intersection, which maybe could have been cured by just making the parking restriction so it wouldn't back up traffic on St. Charles. But we do parking restrictions all the time for reasons other than safety. We tell you where you can park downtown. We tell you how long you can park in other areas. So we do it for traffic control. The reason I want to make a comment is I've been contacted by a couple of other residents who maybe want something different. And I say this for the record, that I told them if you get a different feeling of what the majority rule is between now and the meeting when the ordinance comes up, assuming it passes, can be pulled back and looked at. But the bottom line is I wouldn't have chosen this one. I would have chosen something else, but I don't live there, and I think it doesn't really impact that many other people except the residents on that street, and that's democracy in action. So I'm going to support what the residents have asked for. If at some point it looks like a problem that the city should address on a policy-wide basis for all streets, some other time.
Alderman Bram, then I'll go to Alderman Healy.
Thank you. I agree with the policy. The policy is in place. We created that years ago, and where I do differ in regards to some of the comments made earlier is the policy is not in place to grant what is requested by residents alone. The policy is in place to give that voice, but ultimately we in the dais have to make the best decision what is best not only for those blocks, not only for those constituents around those blocks, but what is appropriate and what is the right reasons why we're doing this overall. Alderman Healy made a comment in regards to the residents wanted something done. I agree. They wanted something done. And if I had cars on both sides of the street, it would be a concern. It's just the same as the rest of the streets or the majority of the streets in town. There's no difference in width, but cars on both sides of the street could cause some concern. The residents, though, according to the survey, were not given, and I was contacted by one of those residents, they were not given the option, and the survey shows so, to do the least, or one of the lesser restrictive options of restricting one side parking. That wasn't an option. What was an option was both sides, different variations of both sides, or no parking at all on the one side. So we didn't hit the option where just doing the least restrictive, which would be no parking, I assume there's fire hydrants on the west side, from 2-hour parking, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days. That would be the least restrictive. That would cause any safety concerns, if there are any, and Alderman Healy made comments that he does not believe that there is in this area. But I think sometimes we have to make the hard choice on what is the most appropriate in the area for the residents and for everybody else. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to amend the report, if I may. And I did write it down.
Fantastic.
So I'll just quickly say it's paragraph 4, and it starts with the sentence "after review." And my changes, and I'll hand this over, Mr. Mayor. After review and in consideration of the survey results, it is the recommendation that 2-hour parking, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days, signage on the one side of Mitchell with fire hydrants from St. Charles Road to Eggleston Avenue be installed. If you want to pass it down to Mr. Mayor, please. Oh.
Okay, all right.
I didn't expect you to get on.
That's all right. I just want to clarify, Alderman Bram, make sure I got this right. Okay, so after school days, quote, school days, signage on the one side of Mitchell Avenue with the fire hydrants from St. Charles to Eggleston. Okay, so we're
removing both sides and doing one side from 8 to 4.
got it, striking on both sides and replacing with on one side at Mitchell with the fire hydrants. Yes, is that clear for your?
It's paraphrased well.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the report to basically remove the on both sides and replace it with signage on one side of Mitchell Avenue with the fire hydrants. A motion before. Do I have a second? I do not see a second. Alderman Bram, motion fails without a second. Continued conversation. Any continued conversation or comment on agenda item 6.16? Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one last point, at least from my standpoint. When I said earlier that the public safety guys and gals said no safety issue, I want to clarify that had there been deemed a safety issue where fire apparatus couldn't get down the street, we don't rely on neighborhood surveys at that point. We put restrictions up. So if the fire or police people had said, we got a safety issue here, we'd have done it and it wouldn't have been resident involvement. So I don't mean to be flip with the safety issue, but at least in my mind, and I think the committee's mind, is once we were confident that the safety was not an overriding factor, then it became how do you give the residents what they clearly want, which was parking restrictions, but yet do so in the least intrusive way. That's what we came down to.
Okay. Any other comments? Clerk Spencer, I asked you call the vote on agenda item 6.16.
York, absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin. Kennedy.
Aye.
Lundquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Goiter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Bram.
No.
Polumsky.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nays, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 6.16 is approved. On to committee reports. 7.1, Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the applicant's request for a variation from the side yard setback requirement for a purpose of constructing a line/above-ground tunnel to connect the adjacent property in the I-1 Restricted Industrial District. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chair, Mark A. Mulliner, Vice Chair, Michael Honquist.
Okay, to put this before council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Levin, your report.
Thank you. The report is on the dais in front of you. We did not meet last week, so we took it up and had a committee meeting just before council tonight. It's a fairly straightforward request. Essentially, the applicant has, and what I say on this item will be equally applicable to 7.2 because it relates to two adjacent properties. So essentially, the owner of the business is in two buildings, and when they want to move product from one building to the other, they have to load up a truck and drive all the way around to the other side of the property, unload it. Their proposal and the reason for their variance is to have a tunnel that connects two buildings. It doesn't really affect anyone else, but it certainly makes their operation a lot smoother because they can move product from one building to the other without loading up a truck and driving around the block to the other building. Was unanimously approved by the commission, Zoning and Planning Commission, as well as our committee, and there's your report.
Okay. Comments or questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fine with the overall report. The one question I have in regards to this issue and the subsequent issues coming out of the committee, under committee reports this evening, is in regards to, and I'll just ask the one question and for each of them right now, is what is the urgency? And why I'm asking that question is on our agenda this evening, or that was on Thursday, we had blank draft reports with no signature. The committee met tonight and decided to sign unanimously for all three reports. But coming into a council meeting, any of the aldermen do not have any idea going into the meeting on what is the discussion. No opportunity to speak with the committee on that discussion, and not knowing on what the recommendation would be coming out of the committee for the before mentioned issues. So since this was done, and I personally deem that this is not best practices, at the very least, I spoke with the city attorney, and he stated to me that it's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act, but it's definitely not best practices. Since this is done, though, what is the urgency? Why can this not, any of these reports, not wait until the following council meeting to be discussed appropriately?
Alderman Levin?
I wouldn't call it an emergency, but I will say that we did post them well in advance, so it's not a matter of them just showing up for tonight. They were posted in advance of Monday's meeting, I believe, when we would have normally met. There was such a high level of concern that nobody showed up to raise any questions about this. There was no one from the public. It was only the applicant themselves. We felt it was not an issue. It's important to them to get it moving. We felt if there was any kind of, it was kind of an issue where there would be a concern that might have an effect on someone else. If someone contacted us, there was the opportunity to do that. It's been up before the regularly scheduled council or committee meeting date. We certainly would have pulled it if they're, since they're trying to get these, both the 7172 and it'll tie into 73, they're trying to get something done for their business, a matter that really does not have much effect on anyone else. We didn't see a reason to hold it back.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. Just a question for the committee for both 7.1 and 7.2. Does the variation, if approved, stay with the property if it were to be sold?
I believe it would, because they're actually building a structure. The tunnel is a structure that connects them.
Oh, yeah, so it's not a conditional use, it's a variation. It stays with the property.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I just want to respond to some of those comments. I know that in our committee, we have made mention that suspending the rules is taken seriously and that should only be done, and I'm not saying that it's not taken seriously by everyone, but that should only be done if there's some type of urgency, some type of financial impact, some type of schedule slip if that report and/or ordinance doesn't move forward. I deem this to be the same thing, along the lines of having a blank report on a consented, or under committee reports, under the agenda for a city council meeting. It should only be done under extreme circumstances. This may be just my personal view, but in regards to trying to maintain best practices, trying to give the community at large as much opportunity to speak, not only in this one instance, this is the second time we did something along these lines, but moving forward, I think that there has to be some type of substantial rationale to do it. A convenience, and I'm not trivializing it, for the business owner, to me, is not adequate. We need to do our due diligence and give the public the right amount of time to review anything on the agenda, if they show up or not.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Levin.
I just want to be clear, we're not moving to suspend any rules. This is not final action. So I feel the same way, that there should be some special urgency before we suspend the rules. We're having a committee meeting. It's brought to the committee. If someone had concerns, anytime we would do that, whether it was a week before or 2 weeks before, we would not move something through that we didn't feel was necessary. Anyone had the right to come out and speak. No one was there. Everything is above board here, and maybe not what you consider to be best practices, but no special suspension of the rules here.
You should
Okay.
address the chair.
Got it. Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could direct my question to Alderman Levin, if I could, please.
Direct it to me and I can direct it to him.
Okay, I believe Alderman Levin stated that there were no residents or aldermen at the committee meeting, is that right?
That's my understanding.
Just
Yes,
one-
yes.
Just wanted to ask, did he get any calls from any residents or any council members ahead of the meeting asking for questions or clarification?
Alderman Levin, any other questions from residents or aldermen prior to this meeting?
There were none.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
No.
Mayor.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call a vote.
York, absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Polemski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 7.1 is approved. On to agenda item 7.2. Clerk Spencer, I ask that you call the roll. I'm
There-
sorry, read the recommendation. Getting a little ahead of ourselves here.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the applicant's request for a variation from the side yard setback requirement for the purpose of constructing a link/above-ground tunnel to connect to the adjacent property in the I-1 Restricted Industrial District. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chair, Mark A. Mulliner, Vice Chair, Michael Honquist.
Okay, to put this before council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion to approve by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Levin.
As I mentioned with respect to item 7.1, this is the companion report, virtually the identical report for the adjacent property at 845 Church Street.
Okay. Questions or comments as it relates to this one? This is connecting the two. No questions or comments. Clerk Spencer.
York, absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palemski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 7.2 is approved. On to 7.3, Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the applicant's request for a conditional use permit for a masseuse service massage facility known as Hand and Stone in the C3 General Commercial District. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Vice Chair Mark A. Mulliner, and Michael Honquist.
To put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Levin, your report.
Thank you, Mayor. This report also was on this evening's DPZ agenda, and it's before you on the dais. This is a business that seeks to open a massage facility, which is a conditional use in the C3 General Commercial District. It's my understanding they're waiting to open and need this approval. And as before, it's been out on board docs. There were no comments or questions from either alderman or the public. No one attended the meeting. Fully supported by the zoning commission, and recommend your approval.
Okay, comments or questions as it relates to agenda item 7.3? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll.
York, absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palemski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 7.3 is approved. On to reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. Mayor Morley, that's me. Real quick. As council will recall, I believe last council meeting, we approved the Golden Meadows, IGA. Since then, the Park District has approved the IGA. Attorneys are preparing the final documents with all the final attachments. I'll be signing in the next week or so, as soon as those are ready. That was for Golden Meadows. And also, Golden Meadows Open House. I know that there was a communication that went out that had a Scrivener's error on it. There is an open house here at City Hall Tuesday the 9th, so that's a week from tomorrow, Tuesday the 9th, from 4 to 7 p.m., is that right, 4 to 7? 4 to 7 p.m., Golden Meadows Open House here at City Hall next Tuesday the 9th. That's it for me. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I have a few items tonight. First, I want to address the fly quiet in the airport. I have a couple airport items, but I'll start with the 6-month test for fly quiet. And as was attested to tonight, it's been anything but quiet over the last week over Elmhurst. And one of the questions that was asked if we would be part of ONCC, which is one of the decision or recommending bodies, this evening, thank you, the City Council approved a report that recommends we join the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission. So we'll be moving forward with that. I think I detailed a few meetings ago that there was going to be a 6-month test period for a fly quiet program, which is a runway rotation plan. And I think what needs to be acknowledged is the fly quiet is a nighttime program. It does not affect daytime operations. It's a nighttime only operation. So from 10 or 10:30 until about 5:30 in the morning, they're trying to rotate the runways so that they can disperse the noise over communities rather than impact one or maybe a dozen communities all the time. So this last week was Elmhurst's first turn in the runway rotation, and it was significant because it was runway 4 right, which is the angled runway that is the most southern on the airfield, and in addition to that, they were arrivals. And we've talked about this before, that arrivals affect residents more than departures because they're coming in slower and lower, so people tend to notice it more. And then you add the fact that it's at night when generally the ambient sound is down, and that all creates a perfect storm here. So as I said, over the past week, runway 4 right has been used as the primary arrival runway from the approximate hours of 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. And as we've heard, and I heard from a number of aldermen, it was made quite obvious by the number of complaints that we received last week. So what we did, and I've been detailing this, is we've encouraged people to go on to the O'Hare Noise Compatibility, the O'Hare Noise website and complete the survey that's on there. I did it myself. It asked for an address. It asked for an approximate time of when this aircraft was over your house. And that will all go into part of the decision-making when the 6-month test is over. So if you hear from people, please encourage them to go online and complete this, because that is a big part of it. In addition, Mayor and I spoke late last week that we'd like to put together a letter to the FAA and to the City of Chicago that opposes this test, because we've seen in its first week that it's not working for the City of Elmhurst. So we are in the process of putting that together, and we will send that letter off voicing our objection to this program. The last thing I would include is that the city website, elmhurst.org, does have a link to the survey, so we've tried to make it as easy as possible for residents to access that.
I would add that we are members, now we're members of ONCC, but we are members of SOC, Suburban O'Hare Commission, and when this runway rotation was proposed and presented to SOC, we voiced our opposition at that time. So at no point has Elmhurst supported this runway rotation. Ultimately, council will recall over the past, I would say maybe starting in 2007, 2008, a presentation was made about the long-term plans for O'Hare. And ultimately, the long-term plan for O'Hare through 2020 is to open up all runways east-west. And we support that. We believe that, I think all major airports in the United States, actually all their runways run east-west. O'Hare's a little odd with these angled runways. So I think it's important to state that Elmhurst has never supported this. We are restating our opposition to this. We are one of many sitting at the table, so much like SOC and now ONCC, you can pick who's going to vote which way on certain proposals depending on which way the runways are angled. But we will continue to make sure that we are involved in all of these O'Hare advisory committees and continue to voice our opposition and what's best for Elmhurst.
Thank you. One other O'Hare item, there was a question a couple weeks ago about the expansion of the terminals. I think we all read in the newspaper that Mayor Emanuel announced a big expansion. Interestingly, one of the factors that SOC identified in a study that was completed was that we should not expand the runways until there's enough gates, because you just can't, the capacity doesn't make sense, the numbers don't align. Well, now, from what we know, and there's not a lot of details out there, Chicago plans to add a $300 million expansion of Terminal 5 and Terminal 2 to add, it looks like a dozen new gates, potentially, 9 new gates to the terminals. They're expected to be completed by 2019, in addition to some other amenities that will go along with that. As more details come out, I'm happy to bring them to council. We don't know how that affects scheduling and flights and all those other details, but once anything like that comes out, I'll certainly bring it to the council.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. And thank you, City Manager, as well. I want to just ask two things. One, I want to thank you for the proposed letter to go out to the FAA. I think that's a good thing to do, to actually stand on, what Elmhurst believes, even though it might be more in a silo relative to some of the other communities next to us. The other thing, though, is I wanted to ask if we could be take a proactive approach instead of waiting to hear from the FAA or whomever, or City of Chicago, or both, of what this terminal expansion will do. I mean, I know the Tribune article made it clear that it's going to significantly increase the number of operations, the number of flights in and out of O'Hare. If this, what I call share the noise, fly quiet program continues on, that is going to make things significantly, as stated by the Tribune, worse for Elmhurst and any other communities. So can we, instead of waiting to hear from them, make the request of them on what are the proposed numbers? What are the proposed data of the number that correlates to the definition of significantly, whatever that may mean, and how that will impact all the surrounding towns? Because typically when they send out information on this is what's happening, the decision's made and it's too late and we don't really have a leg to stand on. So if we can take that approach, that would be appreciated.
Okay, City Manager Grabowski, let me ask you a question. When we talked about expansion in the past, it was removing that runway, wasn't it? Is that part of this plan?
Well, it's been always part of the overall expansion.
Okay.
Of the east-west runway. Both.
Noted, Alderman Bram, certainly we're not going to wait. We will be aggressive in our pursuing of that information. I will say the last plan that I saw that included expansion of the terminals subsequently called for elimination of further diagonal runways and opening of more east-west runways. So as soon as we get more information, we'll let you know. But that part of that expansion was eliminating, last one I saw was 14R, 32L. So more, and adding another east-west runway. As soon as we have it, we'll let you know.
Thank you. And one follow-up, Mr. Mayor. Do we have any documentation to say, because I know it's been said on many of public forums by, I believe, the FAA, if not at least O'Hare or Chicago, documentation that states, once they did the east-west parallel runways, we are only going to use the remaining diagonal runways under emergency situations, or AKA bad weather conditions.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
My understanding is they did not restrict those runways to emergencies only. The FAA and
weather.
the tower control dictates which runways are used on a daily basis, with the exception of the runway rotation that they're under. And that's only a suggestion. If weather patterns change, certainly the tower and the pilot have final control over which runway is used. So I don't think they ever made a statement that it would be only under emergencies, but that the primary, as the mayor just said, the primary use would be the east-west, and as winds shifted and weather controlled, they would have to use the angled runways.
My apologies. I mean, I said emergencies, I meant bad weather. I mean, I know on numerous occasions it was stated the diagonal runways, once all the east-west go in, that they will be used for bad weather conditions only. And now, obviously, with fly quiet or share the noise, that has changed, but I was hoping that there was some type of documentation to follow up on.
Okay, any other comments or questions before City Manager continues with his report? Alderman Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to express my appreciation to the Public Affairs and Safety Committee for examining the potential of joining the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission, and it was quite timely given the fact that this past week was our first go-round with the runway rotation for the 6-month program. I think there are 6 weeks that will impact runway 4R. 4 of those will be landing, which tend to be a little worse, and 2 will be takeoff. So about once a month, we'll get the chance to really evaluate this firsthand. Definitely received a lot of input from residents this past week, and a lot of them were shaken out of their beds in the middle of the night during the week, and a lot of chatter on social media sites. So glad to see that we're moving forward with the ONCC membership, and we'll have a seat at the table for some of the plans that may come out of this commission in the future. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments on O'Hare? Alderman Leader.
Like Alderman Dunn, my second ward colleague, I too received a lot of calls from residents very disturbed by these low-flying, dead-of-night flights. And as a longtime second ward resident, I can certainly sympathize. I want to thank the city manager and the mayor for addressing this issue head-on. I know the city will do all in its power, and so I would just ask that we continue to protest mightily to the FAA, City of Chicago, and the other communities. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? City Manager, on with your report.
Thank you. One last item. Over the weekend, I received a few notes from aldermen requesting some statistics year to year on our crime rates in Elmhurst. And so it struck me as this would be a good opportunity to let the public know and refresh that our monthly reports and our annual reports can be found on the Board Docs site. I know that's something we used to distribute by paper. We no longer do that, but they're on the Board Docs sites, and so you can go there and look at those anytime. And as I said, the public can as well. It's a very transparent area. Specifically regarding crime, though, what I wanted to detail a little bit tonight is how it's reported, and then ask the council's indulgence to get more detail together. So there's the way that the police department reports crime is through the Uniform Crime Reports, or UCR. And that's a standardized system across the nation so that all police agencies are reporting the same information. It's important to know that the FBI only aggregates this information. They don't make comparisons. They don't do any statistical analysis. They don't do any rankings. And it's more of a tool so that if our department wants to go on and look at any trends that are out there, certainly they could use that. I would say that, so there's 8 categories in the UCR. There's 4 violent crimes that are categorized and 4 property crimes. The violent crimes include murder, criminal sexual assault, robbery, and aggravated assault and battery. And then the property crimes that are categorized are burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. And as you can imagine, there's a number of details that go into each one. And the question becomes, well, what offense goes into which category, and how are we able to compare year to year, month to month, whatever it is? It's hard to detail because ours are up and down in each category depending on the year and which category it is. And certainly we can't use percentages to tell the story. Because, for example, in 2014, there were 3 arsons that were categorized, but we had a 66% drop in that in 2015 because there was 1. I mean, the percentage sounds significant, but when you look at the numbers, it's a little more interesting. So what our department does, since Chief Ruth has been here, is to really break these down, and this is the report. I'll hold it up only because of the color, so you can look for it on the monthly reports. The chief has broken that down into 54 detailed categories within this to really detail where things are so that the department can use that as a tool to know where to allocate resources and at what time to allocate the resources. And this is one of the tools that we use to do that. So what I plan to do is dig into this with Chief Ruth and his deputy chiefs and give a good analysis to the council of where things are. Generally, crime is trending down, is what I would tell the council. There's anything that you can pick out here and say, well, gee, this one went up or that one went down, And so to go through all 54 categories tonight, I don't think is best use of the council's time. But I would say generally that major crime is down. Not that we don't have spikes from year to year or season to season. For example, I was talking to the chief, and I think it might be obvious, but thefts to motor vehicles go up in the summer. That's not uncommon across the nation because there's more people outside with the warmer weather. Generally, people leave their cars unlocked when these happen. So it's things like that that are, they need a little more explanation. So with the council's approval, I'd like to really dig into this and give a thorough analysis to the council on where things stand, where our resources are being allocated by the police department, and why they're being allocated there.
Can I see this?
Absolutely. I would close again with reminding people that that is online. People can look at that anytime they like and if they have questions, by all means, call Chief Ruth, call me, call the mayor, and we'll make sure that we can sit down and run through that.
This report specifically is online?
Yes.
All right. All right, well, there is a 5-year comparison. I'm looking at a 5-year comparison report that I think would be helpful. As the city manager said, you can slice and dice this stuff a million different ways. I do know that there was some questions from aldermen over the weekend in terms of a summary, but I think it's, if you're looking for specific information, I think you should, I would ask that aldermen submit specific questions to either Jim Grabowski or Mike Ruth, hey, you know, whether it's, depending on what type of information you're looking for, they can give you a detailed analysis for the last 5 years of that type of information. But if you look at this, I'm looking at a 5-page report, 4-page report that's got literally 1,000 numbers on it. So where to start and where to end would be a little difficult, but I think if you can target your specific queries, it's got to be helpful. But also reading the report itself, which I would ask Jim or the clerk or someone to pull off wherever it is and email it to the alderman, I think would be a good start. Any specific questions? So Alderman Bram.
Not specific, because I do agree with the city manager that a deeper dive would be more beneficial for everyone's time. But the one question, as city manager was speaking about the various categories that were further defined, were those categories further defined by City of Elmhurst, or are those pretty much, I don't know, federal categories used throughout the U.S. and the classifications for each defined by, I don't know, the FBI or someone?
I guess I would answer the first part of that as, I know that the Elmhurst Police Department breaks it down this way. I don't know if it's done outside of the Elmhurst Police Department.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? City Manager Grabowski, on with your report, or does that conclude
That
your
concludes
report?
my report. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes City Manager report. Any other reports from the dais? Alderman Mulliner.
Just a recommendation. I'd like to, as I've been driving a lot down North Avenue, ask that we kind of up our patrols on trucks. That's supposed to be a no-truck route, and there are trucks driving up and down that like there's no tomorrow, and I'm talking about semis. And I'm sure the people who live on North Avenue would appreciate if they didn't have those trucks.
Okay. Alderman Dunn, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just wanted to mention that I was fortunate enough to be able to attend one of the DuPage County Convention and Visitor Bureau's working sessions for the development of their strategic plan. They're looking at ways to continually increase the Convention and Visitors Bureau, visitors traffic to DuPage County. Was nicely attended by a good cross-section of communities with different functions within those communities. So eager to see what is produced by the DCC VB. And there also were a lot of positive comments from those in attendance about Elmhurst, about some of the things we're doing here in terms of the trolley and the development that's going on. I think there was a lot of positive impressions from a lot of the other communities that were in attendance. Thanks.
Okay, any other reports? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. 2 weeks ago, when I asked about O'Hare, I also asked about ComEd and ComEd right-of-way, and city manager agreed to come back, I believe, this evening with a report on that as well. So I was hoping to get some additional information on that report as well. on what ComEd will be doing to maintain their right-of-way, like the rest of Elmhurst residents do.
We've had a number of conversations with Mike Foster from ComEd regarding that, and as I understand it, shortly after, I think the next day, that entire area was mowed. And what we had talked about with him, what they would like to do is to keep I believe, a 50-foot area mowed for sightlines on a weekly basis. And then I think they would like to do the remainder of it on something less than that. We're still talking to ComEd about that, understanding what our ordinance says and what they're up against vegetation-wide in the Chicagoland area. That's the argument that ComEd uses. You know, we have so much to mow that it's not possible, but we're still talking to them about that. But they did agree to keep that area near the roadway as clear as possible so that sightlines are not an issue.
Alderman Brand.
Thank you for the update. I guess it's been not only this summer, multiple summers that we're continue to have this conversation. And I guess, in all due respect, I'm wondering why we're not telling ComEd what they need to do at this point. So far, they've mowed the grass, I think, once, if not twice, and I don't think any of our residents can get away with that. So I look forward to, I guess, the final conversation with ComEd, Mr. Foster, but I personally do not feel it acceptable for them to say they will mow, I would say, 1/10 at best of their property once a week, and take care of the rest whenever they so choose to. And that's my paraphrasing, not yours. Thank you.
Okay, any other reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to ordinances. Agenda item 9.1, Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the ordinance.
An ordinance to accept and approve a certain temporary construction and permanent easement agreement generally located at 103 West 3rd Street in the city of Elmhurst, Illinois.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Deuter. Alderman Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item 9.1 and 9.2 are taken together. Both of these items were on the consent agenda, and we suspended the rules in both of those reports to talk about these tonight under this area to keep the construction project at the Hahn Street development on track.
Okay. Any other comments as it relates to this ordinance and this motion? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
York absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Heinquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Polemski.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nay, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay. On to agenda item 9.2, Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the ordinance.
An ordinance to accept and approve a certain temporary construction and permanent easement agreement generally located at 110 West North Avenue in the city of Elmhurst, Illinois.
Sorry. Oh, I apologize. Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Deuter. Alderman Kennedy.
No further comments based on my earlier discussion.
Okay, any other comments or questions as it relates? Clerk Spencer, I ask that you call the roll.
York absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Polemski.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nays, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 9.2 is approved. On to agenda item 10, resolutions. 10.1, Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the resolution.
A resolution approving and authorizing the execution of change order number 3 of the 2015 South Water Spheroid.
Spheroid.
Water spheroid exterior repainting and lettering project.
To put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution as read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Deuter. Alderman Kennedy, I believe all discussions regarding water spheroids comes out of your committee?
It does indeed.
Okay. You have the
Thank you.
floor.
Thank you very much. This was a change order. There was some inspection done while the additional work was being done for the wet area of the spheroid, and so we have to go back and do some additional work to finish off the project.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the vote.
York, absent. Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palomski.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
Clerk Spencer, could you give me that count again?
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Resolution, agenda item 10.1 is approved. On to other business. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Toledo, second by Alderman Dunn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.